Let's discuss the trilateral relationship between the United States, China, and Russia. The relationship between the United States, China, and Russia is more gripping than any soap opera. Who likes whom? Who betrays whom? What happens next? It's all an unpredictable mystery. Since the establishment of the Communist Party in China in the last century, the relationship between these three countries has gone through several stages, resembling a love triangle with constant plot twists. The relationship among the United States, China, and Russia is filled with complex alliances, divisions, and betrayals, much like Game of Thrones, or the ancient Chinese novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. However, this story is even longer than Game of Thrones, but I'll simplify it, otherwise, we'll all grow old waiting. First, let's go back to the last century, to the era of the first version of the US-China-Soviet drama. In 1949, when the Communist Party established its rule in China, China looked up to Stalin like a young girl idolizing a celebrity. They signed the Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship, Alliance, and Mutual Assistance, resisting the United Nations forces' attack on North Korea. With the blood of millions of Chinese youth, they presented Moscow with a declaration, joining the socialist camp led by the Soviet Union. You see, it's like a 16-year-old girl infatuated with the lead singer of a band, doing everything possible to get close to him, even sacrificing her own youth. Oh, what a tragic story. Then came the era of the second version of the US-China-Soviet drama. China and the Soviet Union split, and after facing the Soviet Union's claimed surgical strike deterrent, China quickly turned to the United States for protection. This is like the promised communism, being just like a boy in a young girl's heart, only to suddenly encounter the harsh reality that the boy she admired is actually a jerk. Then she starts trying to find another boy, maybe a football player on the school team, who makes her feel safe. Our current version is US-China-Russia Drama 3.0, also known as the pro-Russia anti-US version. Seeing this, I think everyone must be thinking, wow, how did the plot twist so quickly? Since Xi Jinping and Trump came into power, US-China relations have been cooling down. After the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in Wuhan, China in 2020, which spread globally, the US and other Western countries have adopted increasingly tough policies towards China. In response, China started getting closer to Russia, attempting to establish a close relationship with Putin. It's like in a TV drama, where the main characters start suspecting and arguing with each other due to a misunderstanding, leading to a breakup. Then, China turns back to her old flame, Russia. Although he's a bit rough, he can help her fight against those malicious colleagues. Xi Jinping even referred to Putin as his best and most intimate friend, which is like the female lead intentionally provoking her ex-boyfriend by dating other men. China and Russia, these two friends, are like hosting a nostalgic Cold War-themed party together, opposing the United States. But at the same time, they are also trying to undermine each other's positions, creating a relationship that is akin to two friends falling in love with the same person. Currently, China is trying to undermine Russia's position in Central Asia by holding the China-Central Asia Summit without inviting Russia. This is like a friend throwing a party on your birthday without inviting you. How would you feel? Definitely very upset. At the same time, Russia is also challenging China on the South China Sea issue, which is like your friend starting to build a house on your territory. That is inappropriate no matter where it happens. One organizing a summit in West Asia, the other holding a conference in the South China Sea. It's like two quarreling lovers trying to snatch friends from each other after a breakup. In this drama, the most amusing and ironic part is the issue of the depreciation of the Chinese yuan. Russia is selling off a large amount of yuan, which is like your friend selling the gift you gave them and using that money to buy something you hate the most. Furthermore, China restricts the export of germanium and gallium, and Russia immediately announces an increase in production of these semiconductor materials. You thought you were best friends, but he's doing something like this behind your back. And all you can do is smile bitterly because you know he's still your friend, and you can't offend him. What I want to say is that whether it's love or international relations, we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket because you never know what might happen in the next second. So, China, the United States, Russia, you better remember this. That's the gist of this US-China-Russia drama. In this story, we can find a lot of humor and amusement. As long as we approach it from a lighthearted perspective, we can discover the fun in it. Despite the ever-changing relationship between the US, China, and Russia, have you ever wondered what the next step will be? I think only time will tell. So let's sit down together and wait for the next scene of this drama. President Xi Jinping meets with the senior American diplomat Henry Kissinger in Beijing. Yes, that 100-year-old friend who flew across the Pacific to visit China. Speaking of Kissinger, he's like a living history textbook, the kind with a 100-year edition. This guy has been to China over 100 times since the 1970s. Do you know what that means? His frequent flyer miles should be enough to buy a whole plane. But on a side note, I really want to know how he remembers all those visits. His memory is better than mine was when I was 20. Interestingly, President Xi Jinping mentioned that Kissinger's visit had special significance because it involved two hundreds, Kissinger being 100 years old and having visited China over 100 times. Well, I think we all understand that Kissinger has reached his century milestone, even though President Xi didn't explicitly say it. Do you know what's funny? Kissinger's visit to China coincided with the trip of the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, in Beijing. It makes me wonder if China is hosting a Meet Famous Americans and Win a Prize event. But it seems like President Xi's schedule had a little issue, as he didn't meet with Kerry or U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen. But he did meet with Kissinger. Does that mean there are advantages to being older? Imagine, the 100-year-old Kissinger sitting with President Xi, what would they talk about? It might be something like, "Hey, do you remember when I came here in 1971? There weren't so many skyscrapers here." And then President Xi might respond, "Haha, back then when you came, I was still just a child." Of course, we all know that US-China relations are currently tense, but I think it's like a friendly competition between a fox and a hedgehog. We're all trying to run, trying to avoid each other's spikes, and Kissinger is the coach on the sidelines with a stopwatch, shouting, "Keep going, I can run at 100 years old, so you definitely can too." Well, if you want to hear more stories about Kissinger in China, I can apply to have him come and share his experiences. He would definitely tell a more detailed account than me. After all, he has been to China over 100 times. On Thursday the 20th, the Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine made a rare visit to Beijing. This is the first high-level visit by a Ukrainian government official to China since 2019. You know, this deputy minister is quite interesting. During the meeting with the Chinese deputy minister, he expressed Ukraine's desire to expand the export of agricultural products to China, while their ports were damaged in the Russian attack, destroying 60,000 tons of agricultural products prepared for shipment to China. I just want to say, Mr. Deputy Minister, did your left hand not communicate well with your right hand? Let me paint a picture for you. The deputy minister is enjoying delicious food in Beijing, having a meal and discussing trade cooperation with the vice minister of the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. Suddenly, his phone rings, he takes a glance, and it's a text message from his own consulate. The port has been attacked, the agricultural products prepared for shipment to China have been destroyed. I'm sure the deputy minister's face must have turned even redder than the wine on his table. What does this story tell us? On one hand, Ukraine is making every effort to expand its exports to China, and on the other hand, their food is being destroyed in Odessa. I have to say, Mr. Deputy Minister of Ukraine, you're performing a high-level balancing act here. This isn't skateboarding, this is pure comedy. But this story also tells us that the relationship between Ukraine and China, like the destroyed food, may seem like Ukraine's loss, but in reality, it's the food that was meant to be shipped to China that got destroyed. So both Ukraine and China are victims. Now, who is the real villain? I don't know if you've guessed it, but it's our old friend, Russia. However, I have a suggestion. Since both Ukraine and China are victims, let's stand together and oppose the real villain. Let's turn Russia's artillery shells into fireworks and bring more joy to everyone. Have you heard about the weather in Beijing recently? It's hotter than an oven over there. Look at the people in Beijing, wearing protective suits like moon astronauts, walking on the streets as if they're attending a special sci-fi themed party. And then, look at those delivery drivers, they're not just delivering food, they're participating in a city version of a survival challenge. They hide under bridges to avoid the sun, as if playing a large-scale outdoor game of hide and seek. It's really tough for them. And that 22-year-old college student, I heard her say, during noon, I feel like the sun is roasting my legs, my skin is about to burn. Hearing that description, I feel like putting her on a barbecue grill, or maybe we can make her into Beijing-style roasted student, our new specialty dish. How about that? Beijing has broken a 23-year record, with temperatures exceeding 35 degrees Celsius for 27 consecutive days. Now, if you tell someone that you spent a month in an oven, they might think you're joking, but in Beijing, it's completely true. In such weather, the lives of the people in Beijing feel like a brand new desert survival reality show, with the theme being the scorching journey through the city. Can't help but imagine, in this kind of weather, those security guards must be even more vigilant at the entrances than ever before. Their new tactic is to let the scorching sun attack the visitors first. And then, let's be honest, if someone dares to cause trouble under such a blazing sun, they must be crazy. Looking at this heat wave, Beijing really needs a new tourism slogan, like, Beijing, experience what it's like to live in an oven, or, Beijing, where the passion is as scorching as the sun. Seeing this situation, all I can do is pray that next summer, the sun in Beijing will take a summer vacation for itself. Because I believe that people there are ready to catch the sun and lock it up in the refrigerator. According to sources cited by the Wall Street Journal on the 20th, the email accounts of U.S. Ambassador to China, Branstad, and the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Katanao, were both hacked by Chinese hackers. This allowed the hackers to gain access to the plans and internal discussions regarding the officials' visits to China and related policy matters. These two individuals were the highest-level officials targeted in this hacking activity, and the U.S. State Department has not disclosed further information for security reasons. Senior officials from the National Security Agency stated that this was a targeted hacking attack and a typical espionage threat. Tens of thousands of emails, including those of U.S. Ambassador to China, were leaked. Microsoft stated that this attack demonstrates the increasing maturity of Chinese hackers' capabilities. The head of the British Secret Intelligence Service, Moore, stated during a speech in Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, on the 19th that China is the most important single strategic focus for the Secret Intelligence Service. They are most concerned about China's influence overseas. Moore said that China's intelligence agencies have abundant resources and personnel, not only in terms of quantity but also in terms of their extensive deployment overseas. Previously, Moore had stated that China is the primary focus of their agency. The U.S. Congress launches an investigation into U.S. venture capital companies' investments in high-tech sectors in China. According to the Wall Street Journal's report on the 19th, the U.S. Congress's U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission is conducting an investigation into investments by companies such as GGV Capital, GSR Capital, Walden International, and Qualcomm Ventures in areas such as Chinese chips and artificial intelligence. The investigation includes specific investment details and the influence of the Chinese authorities within these companies. Open black lens bracket Russia's continuous attacks cause damage to Chinese consulate in Odessa. Close black lens bracket Russia has launched consecutive attacks on the southern Ukrainian port cities of Odessa and Mykolaiv for 3 nights in a row, causing damage to a building housing the Chinese consulate in Odessa. The head of the Odessa Regional Administration, Kipperman, revealed on the 20th that the attackers deliberately targeted the port facilities, resulting in damage to nearby administrative and residential buildings, including the consulate of the People's Republic of China. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that the building of the Chinese consulate in Odessa, Ukraine, was damaged in the Russian military airstrike, with the blast impact causing partial damage to the consulate's walls and window glass. The spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated in a written statement that consulate personnel had already been evacuated, and no casualties were reported. In response to the heat waves currently affecting most parts of the Northern Hemisphere, China has increased its coal consumption in recent weeks. While Beijing has pledged to reduce carbon emissions and control the production and consumption of coal-fired electricity, the country is simultaneously increasing its use of fossil fuel-generated power. In late September 2021, the scorching weather caused an overload on China's power grid, leading to rotating power outages in the southeastern coastal regions. The disasters of 2021 have prompted China to take emergency measures, such as increasing coal mining and constructing more coal-fired power plants. The Russian invasion of Ukraine and subsequent halt in energy supplies to Europe have strengthened the Chinese government's determination to make coal a core component of national energy security. Another significant issue that China's heavy reliance on coal for climate change brings is the method of coal extraction. China's coal is predominantly mined underground, a process that often releases substantial amounts of methane into the atmosphere. Methane has a warming effect on the atmosphere that is 20 to 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. According to Chinese physicists' estimation, 1/4 of China's methane emissions come from over 100,000 domestic coal mines. China is the world's largest emitter of carbon dioxide, with an annual emission of 12.7 billion tons, far surpassing the current annual emission of approximately 5.9 billion tons in the United States. However, these numbers do not tell the whole story. According to analysis by Rhodium Group, China's per capita energy consumption is much lower than that of the United States, with an annual carbon emission of about 10.1 tons, compared to 17.6 tons in the United States. Official data from China briefly revealed the true number of deaths caused by the COVID-19 virus. The official data showed that cremations in Zhejiang province in the first quarter increased by about 70% compared to the same period last year, but this data was deleted 3 days after its release. Epidemiologists who reviewed cached versions of the information stated that this is the latest evidence of significant underreporting in the country's official statistics. Since the outbreak of the first major wave of COVID-19 in China at the end of last year, many local and national authorities have concealed regular data on cremations. It is still unclear why Zhejiang province released the data for the first quarter of this year. Multiple calls to the Zhejiang Civil Affairs Bureau went unanswered. Beijing media outlet Caixin reported on this data on Monday, but the article was quickly taken down. Many Chinese movie fans are forcing Hollywood executives to confront a sobering new reality. The country that once loved American films is now growing distant. The box office performance of Mission: Impossible 7 Fallout, Part 1, in its opening week in China was about 66% lower than the opening week box office of the previous installment in the series in 2018. The top 2 spots on the box office chart were both occupied by Chinese films. Fang, a 60-year-old moviegoer, expressed that Hollywood movies nowadays are becoming less interesting, and he criticized superhero movies like Spider-Man and Captain America for being too superficial. He even said he doesn't want to watch the IMAX 3D versions of these films. Today, Coca-Cola, Nike, and iPhones are no longer scarce in China. Feng Nianchang, a 39-year-old engineer, said that people have lost interest in Hollywood movies. Producer Avery said that incorporating Chinese stars and themes into films like The Meg 2, The Trench, is an effort to avoid the pitfalls that movie studios often fall into, thinking that they can easily attract Chinese moviegoers. That kind of arrogant attitude is a thing of the past, Avery said. On popular Chinese social media platforms such as Weibo, Douban, and Xiaohongshu, young people advocating for gender equality have sparked a discussion about rejecting the societal pressures of conforming to beauty standards. The so-called rejection of beauty standards means breaking away from the mainstream society's aesthetic expectations for women and actively reducing the time and money spent on appearance, such as not wearing makeup and not wearing shapewear. Hello everyone, I'm your news anchor Yali, here to provide you with a one-stop service for Chinese news every day. Feel free to leave comments in the comment section, and we will carefully read and respond to your comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye, everyone. Take care and see you next time.